How were the pyramids of Egypt built? You've seen them, right? The pyramids of Giza, one of the most iconic wonders of the world. You've probably looked at photos of them and thought, how did they do it? How did an ancient civilization manage to create these massive structures with nothing but primitive tools and manpower? No machines, no cranes, no modern technology, just sheer human will and determination. It's a question that has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and everyday people alike for centuries. So let's dive into it. Let's explore how the Egyptians, more than 4,000 years ago, built the pyramids that still stand tall today. We're talking about ancient Egypt around 2600 BC. This was a society built around the Nile River, a river so vital that it became the lifeblood of the entire civilization. The Egyptians believed their pharaohs were living gods. These pharaohs ruled with absolute power, and when they died, they weren't just gone. They believed they entered the afterlife. But to get to the afterlife, they needed a proper send-off, and that's where the pyramids came in. They were tombs designed to honor and house the pharaoh's body after death. But not just any tomb. These were meant to last forever. The pyramids weren't just structures, they were monuments to the pharaoh's greatness. And to be fair, if you were believed to be a living god, you'd want a pretty impressive resting place too, wouldn't you? Now, let's talk logistics. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the most famous of all, was built for Pharaoh Khufu. It was constructed using over 2 million limestone and granite blocks. Some of these blocks weighed anywhere from 2.5 to 80 tons. Just imagine that for a second. You're standing there in the desert, staring at a rock the size of a car, and you've got to figure out how to move it across miles of uneven land. Not only move it, but lift it up to a height of almost 500 feet. Sounds impossible, right? So, how did they do it? Well, there are a lot of theories, but before we dive into those, we need to remember one thing. The Egyptians had one very important resource: people. Tens of thousands of laborers. Contrary to popular belief, the pyramids weren't built by slaves. Most experts now agree that these workers were skilled laborers who took pride in their work. They were organized into teams and worked in shifts, living in nearby camps during construction. They had the manpower, but they also had materials. Limestone was the primary building block, sourced from quarries just across the Nile. Granite, much heavier and harder, was used for the inner chambers and sourced from quarries hundreds of miles away. So, already the Egyptians are dealing with transporting incredibly heavy materials over long distances, but they had a system: transportation. How do you move something that weighs several tons without modern machinery? This is where the ingenuity of the Egyptians really shines through. You're a laborer in ancient Egypt, tasked with moving a massive stone block across the desert. What do? You make the desert work for you. The current theory is that the Egyptians used sleds to drag these stones over the sand. But there's a trick. They likely wetted the sand in front of the sled to reduce friction. This simple act could have cut the amount of force needed to drag the stone by half. Another possibility is that they used wooden rollers, laying them out in front of the sled and continuously moving them forward as the sled advanced. Either way, it was a monumental task, and that's just getting the stones to the site. Once they were there, the real challenge began, stacking them into a pyramid shape. One of the most popular theories about how the pyramids were constructed is the ramp theory. It suggests that the Egyptians built massive ramps to haul the stones up to the higher levels of the pyramid. There are different variations of this theory. Some believe they used straight ramps, while others suggest they may have used spiral ramps that wrapped around the pyramid as it grew taller. Imagine a straight ramp, stretching out for hundreds of feet, slowly getting higher and higher as the pyramid rises. Workers would haul the stones up the ramp using ropes, pulleys, and sheer muscle power. But here's the thing. Once the pyramid reached a certain height, the ramp would have to be incredibly long just to maintain a manageable slope. And as the pyramid got taller, the ramp would have to be rebuilt and extended. It's possible, but also very labor-intensive. The spiral ramp theory seems more practical. In this version, the ramp wraps around the pyramid, allowing workers to haul stones up the sides without needing a ramp that's miles long. This would explain how they managed to build the top of the pyramid, which, as you can imagine, was no small feat. Precision engineering. Now, let's talk about the precision of the pyramids. The Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points. north, south, east, and west. It's so precise that even with today's technology, it would be difficult to replicate. The sides of the pyramid are nearly equal in length, with less than a 1% margin of error. That's astounding, considering they were working with rudimentary tools. They didn't have modern surveying equipment or GPS. So, how did they do it? The Egyptians were master astronomers. They used the stars to align the pyramids, particularly the North Star. By carefully observing the night sky, they could determine true north and adjust the pyramid's orientation accordingly. They also used simple but effective tools like plumb bobs and leveling instruments to ensure everything was straight and level. It was a combination of skilled labor, advanced knowledge of astronomy, and meticulous planning, the workforce. So, we know they had the manpower, the materials, and the know-how. But what was life like for the workers who built the pyramids? Contrary to the image of slaves being whipped and forced to work, most archaeologists believe that the workers were well cared for. Recent discoveries at the workers' villages. So, we know they had the manpower, the materials, and the know-how. But what was life like for the workers who built the pyramids? Contrary to the image of slaves being whipped and forced to work, most archaeologists believe that the workers were well cared for. Recent discoveries at the workers' villages show that they were fed a diet of bread, meat, and beer, a much better diet than most people in the ancient world. They were also housed in large barracks and worked in shifts, which means they weren't subjected to grueling, non-stop labor. It's clear that building the pyramids was a point of pride for these workers. They were creating something that would stand the test of time, something that would honor their pharaoh and ensure his passage to the afterlife. And when you think about it, that's pretty incredible. They weren't just building tombs, they were building monuments to immortality, theories, and mysteries. Of course, there are still plenty of mysteries surrounding the pyramids. Some believe that aliens may have played a role in their construction, while others suggest that the Egyptians had access to some lost, advanced technology. These theories, while intriguing, aren't backed by much evidence. What we do know is that the Egyptians were incredibly resourceful and innovative. They had the manpower, the knowledge, and the organizational skills to pull off one of the greatest engineering feats in history. But even with everything we know, there are still questions. How did they move the largest stones, some weighing up to 80 tons? How did they lift them into place with such precision? How long did it take to build the pyramids? The Great Pyramid is estimated to have taken around 20 years to complete, but some believe it could have been longer. The truth is, we may never have all the answers. The pyramids are more than just tombs. They're symbols of human achievement. They represent the power of human ingenuity and the desire to create something lasting. They've stood for over 4,000 years, surviving earthquakes, wars, and the passage of time itself. When you stand in front of the Great Pyramid, you're not just looking at a pile of stones. You're looking at the culmination of an entire civilization's knowledge, dedication, and skill. So, the next time you see a picture of the pyramids or read about them, remember this. They weren't built by aliens. They weren't built with lost technology. They were built by people like you and me, who had dreams, goals, and the drive to make something that would outlive them. And in the end, they succeeded.